All right, so now we're back with constructive formation. Forgot the C. Constructive formations instead. That's a C right there. All right, again, we're going to go into the 4-panel zigzag type of comic, sequential art. And the first one we're going to look at is an archipelago. Now, an archipelago is a collection of islands that arise from the bottom of the sea. So let's have the sea right here, and it starts with an ocean vent at the bottom of the ocean. Super hot. Only certain animals live around it. Certain animals that like it hot and eat the algae that bloom off of this type of, I'm trying to get my camera to stop refocusing, heat and sulfur. Well, eventually that ocean vent, grows brothers and sisters around it, but it also starts to get quite big and starts foaming at the surface of the water. You can actually see the bubbling action of the boiling happening. And eventually, it rises enough as an underwater volcano to erupt on land and cools enough to have life on it. That's how Hawaii was formed. It is actually a bunch of underwater volcanoes that eventually erupted and appeared on the surface. They cooled down and life grew on top of them. Life found a way. So that's an archipelago. Granted, it is just underwater volcanoes, which will lead us perfectly into our next one. I'm getting close to the edge there. Which of course is the volcano. There are 3 different types of volcanoes: shields, composites, and cinder cones. We're going to go with composite today, very much like St. Helens volcano that erupted in 1980. These are huge and violent. So we have the ground, might have a little hill here because underneath is pushing up magma. As the pressure builds and builds and builds, we have a magma core start to build underneath the mountain. Cracks start to pour out and magma starts filling in those cracks. Eventually you'll have a dome, which is the active part of the volcano, and you'll actually have more and more and more lava tubes pushing their way out until eventually the whole top blows off. Yes, I had to make sound effects with this. And that magma is able to freely escape in pyroclastic fashion. Ragingly hot gas pouring out at 500 miles per hour. Big molten boulders of magma and hot rock falling down the sides of the mountain. When a volcano goes like this, you hope that it goes up and not out. All right, so volcano. Now the last one we're going to look at is actually a mix of destructive forces and constructive forces. It's both. The constructive takes a long time to happen, but the destructive part of it is very short and very destructive. We're going to be looking at earthquake. We're going to go back to the concept that the crust that goes around our planet is actually made of different plates. We're going to have a junction between 2 plates right here. And they push against each other and they rub against each other. And usually they slide along each other like this. But sometimes And this is the constructive part. They'll make ridges and mountains going along them. They push up and start forming more and more wrinkles in the land along a fault line, like the San Andreas Fault that you can see out in California. And eventually, just becomes too much energy and something has to give. It's during that give part that all that energy is released. And what we'll have, especially, let's say, San Francisco in 1903, absolute destruction of the city itself. I'm not very good at drawing buildings, I'll just say that much. Huge cracks ran through the middle of the streets, buildings shattered, electric lines fell over, trolleys were thrown off their tracks, and as you can see in that one earthquake video, the Great Kanto earthquake, it was extremely destructive. That earthquake in Kanto was only a 7.9 though. The one that happened more recently in Japan in 2011 was a 9.3 earthquake. All right, so there you are. Go and follow our sequential art to learn about these different constructive and deconstructive formations. And I'll show you a colored in example in the Google Classroom. Choose one and make it look really nice. Do your research behind it. And if you want to do a volcano or an archipelago, I'll show you a finished example of one of these comics. All right, can't wait to see what y'all send me.